Welcome to, I think, the last of the sessions that Visit Wales are running across Wales, Visit Wales Tourism Ministry event called Improving the Visitor Experience. So, improving the visitor experience, my business is the Castle Hotel in Conway, and every day we are reminded that we need to improve the visitor experience, and it's usually when the email drops in my inbox from TripAdvisor. Fortunately, we tend to get good scores on TripAdvisor, but every now and again there's a 1 or a 2 out of 5, which always gives us a bit of a jolt. But we live in that world. I mean, this, the streaming of this today and everything's so instant. So the theme of the day, I think, is very timely, always is timely, to just remind ourselves that clearly we're in business because we could give a good service or a good experience.
It's simple to exceed visitor expectations, isn't it? Well, I think it's pretty difficult to do that in tourism, and one of the main reasons why it's so difficult is because that tourism's a pretty complicated product. It's not a single product. It's a complete and complicated range of different products. It's places to stay, it's things to do, it's places to visit, it's people you meet. Just requires one of those elements of the product not to be up to scratch for the experience to actually be less than good. They say that holidays are a collection of memories. You buy a tourism product, but it's the experience that you remember. And I think that's really important, a very strong sort of way of defining the sort of job and challenge that we're all in tourism, is to ensure that, in fact, every aspect of that visitor journey, that visitor stay, is a good one. We talk about other things in the strategy, about the need to improve the quality of the product, the need to have a strong brand positioning for Wales, the need to improve people skills, the need to make sure that the places, our destinations, our resorts and towns and cities are good places to visit. But we also talk about partnership, and it's fundamental to what we do in tourism. Visit Wales is a relatively small organisation with fairly sort of small resources to market and develop tourism. That's why we can't do it alone. You people, you businesses, you are the fundamental core of tourism. You provide the experience at the front line. You meet visitors, you engage with visitors much more than Visit Wales staff could ever do. So the importance of working with you, with the regional tourism partnerships, with local authorities, with other organisations, it's fundamental. It's fundamental to trying to actually improve the quality of the overall visitor experience.
Now, we can't control weather or geography or people's understanding of either, but we can tackle the welcome and what there is to do. The renowned American travel broadcaster Peter Greenberg said, ahead of doing his international radio show in Wales a couple of years ago, quite simply, you can't sell places, you can only sell experiences. That might sound a bit like advertising speak, but he knows what he's talking about. He went to stay in Sydney, Australia for a travel show and saw dozens of other travel journalists wax lyrical about what Sydney is and what it has. The Opera House, Harbour Bridge, etc. And we can all see it in our minds now. And I bet we've all got a very similar image in mind. But Peter got talking to the staff at the hotel and discovered that the concierge did a bit of moonlighting. When he was off duty, he would offer guests a tour of the city on the back of a Harley Davidson. Peter took the tour and told his listeners about the experience, and within weeks, that hotel was booked solid. And the moonlighting concierge now actually has a fleet of Harleys and riders giving visitors that same fantastic experience. Now, we can't necessarily replicate that, but that visitor experience was made special because it offered a very different view to the common perceptions of Sydney. And we have that same opportunity in Wales, simply because people don't believe they'll get much of a welcome, and there isn't much to do here. If we focus on the welcome and show people the experience, we can bring their visit to life, and as Peter says, it is the experience that sells a place, not the view, not the architecture, and not the history, but how you can experience it.
In my general experience, I think that businesses who work in the tourism industry in Wales are extremely daunted by the prospect of generating publicity outside of Wales, and sometimes actually focus their attentions on local businesses, etc., and local tourism. In my experience, I've found it very, very easy to get press for Welsh products outside of Wales. I found it very, very easy to actually get a real degree of enthusiasm because, let's face it, the Welsh story has not been told to death. You might feel it has because you're engaged in the Welsh tourism industry, but it hasn't. I edit Wales View, which is I'd like to say is the primary magazine rather than brochure, for reasons I'll explain, about Wales. And it prints hundreds of thousands of copies. It's marketed in Wales, but it's also marketed right across the world. One of the other things, obviously, is the fact that all these titles are available digitally as well. I would encourage you to read the magazine because I think it's good. I would say that, wouldn't I? But I would also encourage people to, if you give your potential customers a flavour of what Wales is all about. I think that we represent it in a very objective, authoritative and entertaining way. Again, I would say that, wouldn't I? Food and drink, without a doubt, is such a fantastic resource in Wales, but we don't make enough of it. There's not enough consumer-facing boasting about the quality of our produce and the quality of our places to eat. Cultural diversity, I've mentioned. Art is not something I've mentioned, but Kerry mentioned that that we should be celebrating local creativity of all kinds, and you should be making a special effort. There's no point, you should be pointing people towards great art that's been created in your towns, in your villages, and all other areas, because that's something that really does give wealth to an experience. And the Welsh language culture, that's something that's absolutely key, I think. And again, it's not something that we. There have been periods in history when we've literally sat there and kind of almost denied our own national culture, or done the opposite and gone on about it so much that we bored people to tears. There's got to be a happy medium. We exist. We exist as a Welsh language culture. We exist as a multilingual culture. Again, let's just reflect that. Press coverage, what helps? Visual assets. Your photography is so important to your business. You will not get, by and large, somebody will come to your business and spend, let's say they spend a weekend in northeast Wales, walking, enjoying the experience, staying in great places, eating great food. They won't come with a photographer. So if you want the commissioning editor to be excited by the prospect of sending somebody to North East Wales first, you've got to impress them with photography. And secondly, if they're going to run it in their newspaper or their magazine, you're going to need some really good assets. I've used photographers, whichever business I've been involved in. The first thing I've done is work with PR. Fortunately, I'm married to a PR, so that's. I still have to pay her more than the market share, I feel. But anyway, she doesn't do me any deals, and photography. And I employ a photographer to shoot whatever business, whatever I'm doing, because if you haven't got those two assets, you can't speak to the press. I mean, you can speak to the press without a PR, but you have to be kind of really knowledgeable about what you're doing. And so I think that I'll be brutally honest. I'm not. The services of photographer, I'm sure, are varying in their price points. All very reasonable. Exactly. But I mean, I'd rather spend 1,500 quid on a photographer than spend 1,500 quid on advertising. It's as simple as that. Always recognise that you're part of a bigger picture. I know that we've done this by dint of doing events in different localities. I would like you to think of yourself as a joined-up operation, and think about, not thinking about rivalry with local businesses, but collaboration with local businesses, which I mentioned, but also recognise that there will be businesses in the Lake District or the Peak District or Scotland or Ireland, etc., etc. So what you're delivering to the I'm not talking about delivering to the customer, but what you're delivering to the commissioning editor on a newspaper or magazine has to have a certain attraction. Timing, you have to think in 3 or 6 months in advance of publication, particularly with events-based stuff. Again, we talked about, previously I've talked about Mother's Day and sort of cornerstone events in the calendar. You have to think about what you're selling to a PR would have to think 3 or 6 months in advance about what idea they're selling to a magazine 3 or 6 months in advance of actual publication. And then the thing that I've benefited from hugely in my experience as a journalist working in Wales is getting local businesses to collaborate, so that I've got 3 golf clubs lined up. I'm staying in these places. They're all talking to each other. They're going, why don't you go to this restaurant or this cafe? Rather than kind of this idea of, right, we've invited you down. You're all ours. Don't even look. No, don't look over your shoulder. There's another hotel, B&B, restaurant. The fact of the matter is that you want to try and engage people to stay a minimum of 3 days, 2 nights, and in doing so, they have to have a variety of experiences. They have to have 3 or 4 different experiences during the day, and they will have to eat and possibly stay at the same place, but eat at different places for that experience. That's what journalists want. They want variety, 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 variety.
Within a few hours of being asked to do this presentation, I suddenly read something while I was flipping through a magazine. Forgive it if it's not large enough, but it says, people may forget what you said to them, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And customer experience is usually about the feelings people have when they walk away. When I walked in a few months ago to try and do some things with the business, I didn't have £100,000 or £250,000 or £1 million to go and renovate a few things that had been missed out from 12 months ago. So I sat down and I said, how do we change this? And we came up with this concept. What could we do that would give the biggest bang for our buck? So little things that if some of you come back in the next few months, what you'll find is almost all the white paintwork will have been repainted, just because it's one of the simplest things that we can do. A pot of paint doesn't cost very much money. It doesn't cost very much to send someone around with a paintbrush. But when you walk in, it feels new. We're always looking for biggest bangs from the buck. As money has got tighter for our customer, it's got tighter for us as business people. And we have a tendency of doing 2 things. One is trying to work harder, let some of the people go that we can't afford, and try and take on their workload. And as a result of it, we get more stressed, we achieve less, and we certainly don't give the customer the experience that we could. But equally, we forget what's going on around us. I was involved in a business a number of years ago, and I was involved in it for quite some time. And because I was involved in running it, I never went to work anywhere else. I never went to other people's businesses. And by the time I left that business, I realized the industry had changed around me. And I had no idea, because I was too busy running my business. And the competition completely overtook me. They had gone. They were out of sight. And that was one of the things that I tried to make sure that we did here. Be a customer. However busy you are, get out. Go and visit your worthy competitors. I know, as much as I love our hotel, I know that we've got a long way to go before we get to delivering the customer experience that I want us to be delivering. We've got some very worthy competitors, and I tip my hat to them, I respect them, and I will stay in their hotel, and I will watch what they do, because I admire them, and I respect them, and I want to learn from them. And one day I want them to come here and say, now we want to be like you. So take the time to visit your competitors. Visit similar attractions in the region. Go to different regions and learn from other professionals, because you will see the things that I saw. You will see your own popcorn moments, your own lollipops with the coffee. You will see them as it relates to your own business. And these are very simple things that you can do instantly. You don't need... We invested a lot of money in a spa. I got no idea what the return on investment payback period is. But I know that if I buy a bottle of champagne and give people complimentary glasses, I can probably charge an extra £5 a night. and people will be happy to pay for it, and I get an immediate return for my 50 pence investment in a glass of champagne. So I spend all my time at the moment thinking like that. What little things can we do? And learning from other people. And by travelling around, and everyone says, I haven't got the time, I can't do that. Well, genuinely, I don't think you can afford not to. I don't know all of your businesses, but when we were looking at our sales channels, we weren't doing any customer follow-up. If you take weddings, for instance, I happen to turn around, I'm trying to find ways of generating revenue without spending too much money. And I said, do we ever send out anniversary offers to people that got married here? No one had ever thought of it. Never been done. We're doing it now. We're doing it now. And we will get some business, but we will do similar things to that in every single business channel that we have. And I would suggest that you spend some time looking at every distribution channel that you have and how you can create repeat customers from existing customers or people who come and then go away.